right. All right. Alexei, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Excited to be here.
So, your story, from what I understand, starts in investment banking, which I think is pretty interesting. So, I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And then all the way to today, when you're a founder and CEO of a seven-figure marketing agency where you do SEO, focus on growth, and you own a holding company as well, where you buy and own profitable tech-enabled brands. You'll tell a little bit more about what exactly it is and what exactly you do with that. But yeah, I've got a lot of questions, but I'd like to start just a little bit at the beginning because I think investment banking is interesting. It's something I've never done, but I've read somewhere about you that you started doing in a job where you were doing 100-hour work weeks, and that's what we hear often about investment bankers, right? It's like really long hours. It's really hard, but also pays really well typically if you stay there for a while. So I'm curious, how did that prepare you for your entrepreneurial journey then later on?
Yeah. All very interesting questions. So, yeah, to start with, look, I got into investment banking because I was really interested in finance and I started trading equities when I was 16. And then to become a better investor, I thought I want to be doing investment banking to learn how to value companies properly. I was indeed for the, 2 years I was there working 100-hour plus weeks. And how it prepared me for the entrepreneurial journey, you learn how to work under pressure, you learn how to be extremely resourceful, and to some extent it also gives you like a very like professional attitude to life and to business. So I would say these are the three key things.
Mm. It's interesting. Is it common actually? So that's something I've I think if you want to be successful in your career, or I guess if let's put it this way, if you want to make money in your career, I think finance is a very good career option, right? It can be hard. I'm sure it's competitive, but it's one of those careers that we hear about. It's like, well, that's where the money is. Is it common for people to go from finance into business or not at all? Because I feel like it is. While you in both cases you need to be competitive, you need to work hard, but it is also quite different, right? Finance is like very much more, I don't know, seems like more strict, and you need to like follow the rules, and there's all this compliance, and I don't know, could be wrong, but that's my
Yeah,
impression as somebody who's
I
never
mean,
been in that industry.
yeah, there are a couple of things you mentioned. So let's say, in terms of does finance prepare you to be a successful entrepreneur, and is it actually a good path to go towards if you want to, end up having your own business down the line? I 100% believe so because it teaches you the financial discipline and it teaches you to look at a business not from a passion or some sort of, let's say, subjective perspective, but rather from a neutral, financial driven numbers perspective. And so
Mhm.
that leads you to understand that any type of business can become a successful business. And equally, the sexiest business on the planet might actually potentially not be the best businesses, right? If
Mm.
you look at them from a financial perspective. So it gives you definitely a good, edge in business. Is it the best path? I don't think there is one path which is the best. And that
Mm.
leads me to answer your second question around, is it that common? And there was actually a study, I think Carter did the study, or maybe somebody else, where they took, I think, like 1,000 unicorn founders and they tried to map the journey and the common factors between all these different founders. And one observation was, if you were American born, let's say, most likely than not, you did Ivy League plus finance or consulting. If you were an immigrant or you were, outside the US, becoming a unicorn, then most likely than not, you did an engineering degree, did engineering. By engineering, they also include computer science, and
Mhm.
then you did the business, right? So many ways lead to Rome is the answer,
Mhm.
but more likely than not, you did go through finance or consulting. And the reason again is because if you look at an aggregate level, the people who go or who used to go, of course it's changing with, people changing their attitude to life and work, etc. But like, let's say 15 years ago, when I guess, I started university, etc., everybody who was like the hard worker on the street wanted to be in finance or consulting, right? Today,
Mhm.
the tech industry is much bigger. So of course you have way more people going into tech straight away. Like, my wife is much younger than me, so she went straight into tech. She didn't have to go into
Hmm.
finance or consulting. She just said, oh, yeah, tech is the most obvious answer. So why don't I do that, right? And maybe today you even have like a lot of creatives going first into YouTube, becoming massive on YouTube, and then,
Hmm.
launching a software company after that, right? So basically it changes with time. But 15 years ago, this was definitely a really good path to success, let's say.
Hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Well, I took the other path as well. So I did computer science. Not so much because I wanted to work in tech, or I'm not sure if I had some entrepreneurial aspirations already back then, but it was mostly just, I don't know, it was just out of interest. So took that kind of approach, and yeah, I mean, worked out well for me as well. So yeah, there are multiple paths, and it's interesting. You said how when you work in finance, you start understanding the financial side of things, because a lot of founders, I know a lot of people, and maybe even myself included to some extent, you can be making pretty significant amounts of revenue already, and you absolutely don't understand your financials. Like you cannot read your P&L statements. You don't know what's cash flow. Like, all those kind of things very often come very, very late in the journey of a founder who doesn't actually have financial background, or who doesn't maybe proactively study that, or who maybe doesn't think that that's a very important part. So I know that I've
Exactly.
still got a
Exactly.
lot to learn on that side as well. All right, before we continue, I want to take a second to talk about our sponsor. I've always been saying that one of the best ways to learn about business is by working closely with a smart and successful entrepreneur, and this might be your opportunity. Our sponsor is a company called Judge Me. Judge Me is a Shopify product review plugin, and they're the number one plugin on Shopify. They're literally, if you look at the Shopify App Store, they're in the first spot. They're bootstrapped, and they managed to outcompete other companies that raised hundreds of millions of dollars by just being smarter and building a better product. They were started by PJ, who was also a guest on the Founders Lounge, episode 54, so I recommend you to check it out. They recently moved their headquarters to London, and they're looking for smart people to join them. They're looking for product managers, engineers, and they're looking to fill other roles as well. So check out careers.judge.me and see if you find any role that you like and apply. So that's careers.judge.me. Now, enjoy the rest of the episode. Right. So then, I believe it was 2018, you said to your friend, we should launch a CBD marketplace instead of a fund. So you wanted to start a fund, but you started a CBD marketplace instead. And then next thing you know, you have a company that was valued at quite a significant valuation. So can you tell a little bit more about that story?
Sure, sure, sure. So it was actually end of 2019, but maybe mid 2018 was the time when I saw that Canada was legalizing cannabis on a federal level, and the US was moving into the same direction. And there was a massive influx of capital into the, let's say, cannabis ecosystem in both the, in Canada and in the US. That to in During that time, I was in private equity, which I joined after actually doing venture capital for a few years for a family office. And during my time as a venture capitalist, as a family office, I managed to build out a really good network of family office investors, and also various like large angels. So what happened is, when I saw the interest of capital and the movement of capital in this industry, i.e. cannabis, I started talking to a bunch of family offices whether they would back a cannabis fund, for example, if I were to launch one. And so with the track record I had as an investor, basically I had a bunch of interested parties to back me as an investor in cannabis. And so I started my journey by leaving private equity, so summer 2019, and then spending a month in Canada and California meeting 50 plus founders in the cannabis space. And I guess unfortunately, I couldn't manage to meet a good founder I would back. I mean, a lot of them were very lucky to be in the space, right time, right place, raised a lot of money, but none of them had any like great business background, let's say, or nobody of them had like a second time founder background. So in short, I said, okay, well, A, valuations are crazy. B, I don't want to back anybody. And then C, a lot of them were talking about how they want to expand in the UK and Europe, and how they are looking for a partner to partner with. And so that's when the CBD marketplace idea came along. which was, well, why don't I start with CBD, which is legal in Europe? And when cannabis becomes legal, we can use the base and the relationships to just add cannabis products to it. And in the meantime, a lot of the companies in Canada and the US were also CBD companies, or had, cannabis arms, but also had a CBD arm. They were saying, well, if there is a partner to partner with, if you do that, we would do it with you. So that's how it all started. And then end of 2019, I hired a good friend of mine from Ukraine, who we moved to Germany, who was the CTO of Marketplace, which was a competitor to Etsy in Germany, so B2C marketplace. And I basically hired him as my CTO, and we started building the marketplace and basically raised our £500,000 at a 5 million pre-money straight out of the get-go, like within basically 2 weeks of launching. And the reason was, on the one hand, a bunch of the investors were the ones who I already, let's say, warmed up for the whole cannabis idea, cannabis fund idea. And on the other hand, when we were raising, the market was in a very good mood, let's say, towards the cannabis and CBD space. And we were one of the, let's say, first entrance into the UK market as well. So that all helped. And then, yeah, I guess then shortly after, we raised a bit more because we didn't know where the market will go after COVID. And, the market started recovering quite well. So we raised a bit more. And then a year after that, we, raised another 2.4 million round, of which around 650 came from Cedars. And that was at post-money valuation of £12.4 million. So I guess back then it was back then like a very neutral, like conservative valuation still, because I know of examples, raising at 100 million plus with less revenue than we had. But today, of course, it would be considered as a very let's say optimistic valuation.
Okay, and then so what happened then? I'm not sure when you come to today. So today you have the agency, you have the holding company. What's
Yeah.
there in the middle? How do we get to today? That's
How do we
the
get
part
to
of the picture
today?
that I'm missing a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, we were the top three UK companies in terms of best transformation of the year. Basically, the Lloyd's Bank has an award for that because it was a
Really?
very big transformation we undertook. So the story goes as follows. So just to maybe clarify one thing, today it is more a holding company, but the agency is part of the holding company. The other piece in the holding company is the consumer brand we acquired in the US in the aroma and fragrancy space. And then the marketplace, let's say, is still there, although we shut down the back end for the time being, just to become profitable as a holding company overall. But the way we, let's say, got to today was by basically ranking organically as a marketplace, number one on most search terms, including most of the brands you can think of, like Trip Drink, Nature Can, like whatever brand in the UK in CBD, we had them on our marketplace. And if you were to Google that brand name, you would have our marketplace number one in Google organically. And so what happened is that most of these brands started asking us to help them to do their own SEO, to do their own organic ranking on Google. And the reason they came to us is because you cannot run ads on Facebook or Google in CBD. It's similar to the adult industry, the crypto industry, the gambling industry. It's basically prohibited to bid on ads on keywords. And so what happened is we became extremely well known for SEO, and we basically created an SEO agency initially focused on cannabis and CBD brands. That's where all our leads came from. We did zero marketing for the agency. It's just every time we onboarded a brand on the marketplace, and the marketplace was basically a drop shipping marketplace. So we took API keys from various brands to their store, right? To the, Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, etc. So we didn't have any stock. We didn't have any inventory. And that allowed us to basically list indefinite number of brands. So at some point we had like 220 plus brands, 2,000 plus products. And every time we listed the brand, we basically said, hey, did you know we also do SEO for XYZ? Happy to do it for you as well. So it was a nice upsell. And that's how basically that's how we were building the business pretty much from month 6, because we understood that building a marketplace takes much longer than we thought it will. And so from, let's say, month 6 in our journey, we added the agency as a subsidiary. And for 12 months until basically the next funding round, we were making a lot of cash with the agency and reducing our cash burn on the marketplace, right? Like, again, talking about, the financial, let's say, know-how. Like, I knew, okay, building a marketplace takes time. Therefore, the longer your run rate can be, the better it is. And therefore, an agency is like a very nice thing to have. Now, what happened then is that we started getting referrals from either existing clients or investors to do SEO for non-CBD and non-cannabis brands. So suddenly we did basically market finance, which today is called Kria. We did a bunch of like other fintech companies. We did SaaS, Zelle, Qualum, Coleno, etc. And then over time, we actually had more non-e-commerce clients, so B2B clients, than we had B2C clients. And then we were like, well, this all happened basically without spending any marketing on the agency. What happens actually if we actually start spending marketing and if we start creating content? So that's what we then started, let's say 18 months ago in our, let's say, 4-year journey. And then the brand came to us by doing something, let's say, more radical than let's say most companies, especially companies with funding, do. So what happened is, when we did the funding round to raise 2.4 million, Biden, now the president of the US, promised that cannabis will become legal. At the same time, the Hut Group, which is a UK group which has e-commerce brands, marketplaces, and services, so very similar to us, was doing a listing. And so we basically said, hey, we by now have a marketplace, an agency, and also actually we had a data product as well, which I never mentioned, but we actually had like customers from the US buying a data product from us on the back of data from the marketplace. And everybody hoped, and of course us as well, that the US will have a legal cannabis market, which would mean a lot of the brands suddenly do move to the UK and Europe. And then Biden didn't legalize it. And then the market started crashing. And so we were left with realizing that cannabis will never become legal. Well, by never, I mean like not within the next 4 years. And the market started crashing as well, which means that the market was no longer giving you a premium for you to be in cannabis. And then why do you want to be in cannabis where you cannot work with most banks, you cannot work with most payment processes, you cannot run any ads if you don't even get your premium? And at the same time, one of my investors calls me up and is like, hey, have you seen this whole Amazon aggregation play out there? And I said, yeah, I have, because a bunch of the founders of Amazon aggregators were in my analyst class at Nomura with me. And to be honest, I don't think that business model works, because you cannot just aggregate hundreds of brands thinking that you will be successful.
There's a bunch of them filing for bankruptcy now, just in this
Correct,
recent days.
correct. And I've been basically calling that for, basically since they raised money. Like, if you check out my LinkedIn, like 1.5 years, I posted the first time they will go bankrupt. 1 year ago, I said top 10 reasons why they will go bankrupt, et cetera, et cetera. Then 2 months ago, when Thrasio announced they might go for bankruptcy, I put like a long piece of content, and I'm about to actually put a long YouTube video on the Thrasio bankruptcy, which again was announced last week. But long story short, we were offered a massive debt facility to buy up Amazon brands as well, because we were basically the guys in the e-commerce space. And I said, look, I don't want that facility because that business model is not successful. However, what was happening at the same time was, when the Amazon aggregator started collapsing, which is summer 2021, which is shortly after we did the funding round, I realized, hang on, there is a massive, there is a big vacuum now of brands looking to sell, but no buyers out there anymore, because all the aggregators couldn't raise any funding anymore. And they were basically trapped trying to rescue their business. And so what happened is that we started looking for 1 or 2 potential acquisitions, and we looked at the wellness space only. The reason we looked at wellness was because by that time we still had a very good marketplace, and that marketplace had a bunch of CBD brands, but a lot of CBD brands had also other products like beauty products, skincare products, supplements. And so we knew roughly how to scale these type of brands as well. And so we started hiring Amazon growth expertise in-house. We started building a PPC services on Amazon service in addition to our SEO agency within the agency. And at the same time, we started basically reaching out to thousands of brands on Amazon with, automated personalized emails, which appear very personalized and, individual. And we ended up acquiring in January 2022 a scented candles brand in the US for a 2 times profit multiple, which we scaled in 2 years 6 times. And that basically
Nice.
helped us really, getting out as a really strong business, because just the agency alone, obviously it's a growing business as well, but it's not as sexy maybe as having also another like really strong brand. And so that kind of, let's say, real transformation by doing a
Mhm.
really bold move and acquiring a very like completely independent to like cannabis or CBD brand, saved the business for us. And so yeah, that's kind of how we end up where we are today.
Nice. That's a pretty crazy pivot, right? So if I got that right, so you guys had the marketplace, you raised funding for the marketplace, you realized that that's going to be a very difficult or very long or impossible journey, and and you used the skills that you acquired because you had to become good at SEO. You use those skills to start an agency. The agency becomes a good business, and then you use, I'm assuming, the capital that was still left in the business from when you raised to
Correct.
start acquiring Amazon brands, basically,
Exactly, except that
and
we only
using your
acquired one. Yeah, we acquired
you acquired
one.
one,
Yeah,
and you
Nomad.
plan on acquiring more.
So until February this year, so 2023, I was probably talking to at least one brand a week, right? And we
Hmm.
probably looked at another, I don't know, 50 brands since we acquired that one brand. And the reason was, of course, because we saw that it's actually really possible to scale a brand which you buy.
Mm.
The main, I guess, change in strategy came because the central bank started increasing interest rates and capital
Hmm.
became way more expensive. And when you scale an
Hmm.
e-commerce brand, so very different to software, you actually need a lot of money to buy more inventory. So if you're really good at marketing, what happens is you basically suddenly need to buy more inventory, and there is a cash conversion cycle issue, because you need to order inventory and then you need to wait till you get it. And usually, when you sell really fast, you might run out of inventory before that inventory gets to you. And
Hmm.
so, because the markets became tougher for capital raising, for debt funding, etc., we basically decided that, okay, let's not gamble anymore, right? Let's not challenge the luck again, and let's just double down on the brand we acquired. And also, let's focus on building content for the agency as well. And basically, we said, look, we have two successful businesses. The market's changed from growth at all costs to profitability is key. So
Yeah.
let's become profitable, and that's what we did. So the website, I need to maybe update the website for Alphawell Brands, but we no longer really like look for acquisitions. To be honest, we do look for occasional acquisitions, maybe even more on the agency front right now, to build out the agency offering towards SaaS founders. But on the brand side, I think it's actually much easier to create a $20 million brand one than having 10 brands and trying to create, I don't know, like 20 million with them, right? I mean, unless you buy them, but then you need capital for that. But like organically speaking, focusing on profit, it's much easier to focus on one brand and then building out the product portfolio, sense in our case as well, and then geography, and then going omni-channel.
How's your focus split now? So your personal focus between the e-com and the
Yeah.
agency.
My personal focus, so e-com is, let's say, easier to than the agency. So the e-commerce requires maybe 20% of my week.
Hmm.
The agency requires 50, let's say, percent of my week, because happy to talk more about it, but it's usually 2 steps forward, 1 step backward with agency.
Hmm.
But it's a very interesting business model because it's B2B, it's more intellectual. And so I do enjoy spending a lot of time on that and like trying to crack that, let's say, the puzzle. And then the remaining, whatever, 20 to 30%, I focus on also building my personal brand, which again, of course,
Hmm.
brings leads to the agency most of the time. But I think also, brings me or gives me visibility what else we could do, like strategically speaking, both on the
Yeah.
brand side or the agency side.
Yeah, I think building a personal brand in general. So for a while, I was quite divided between that. I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I should be focusing 100% of my time on the business. But then you realize that you, as the founder, I mean, you are the business, right? And if you have a bit of a personal brand, it does give you a lot of access and opportunities, and it teaches you a lot of stuff that you otherwise wouldn't learn. So it can be a strategy, right? It's probably not for everyone, or it's not the only strategy, but there's a lot of value. And one of my business partners, he has a bigger personal brand than I do, and it helps us with introductions to mentors, to partners, etc., etc. So there's a lot of value for the business, for the current business, and for potential future businesses in that, right? So I think it's pretty interesting. So you were saying, yeah, about the difference between the agency and ecom, which I'd love to talk about a little bit. I think it's always interesting. I was always more of a fan of product businesses because I always look at it like, it's something like you build it once and then it works, and then you start and you focus on the next part of business, maybe the next product, and then that one works, and then you focus on the next product and you scale like that, right? Like one part of it becomes more automated. While with an agency, I always thought, I've never done an agency. I was freelancing at the beginning of my career, but that's about it. But I always felt like it's much more of an ongoing client work and more of an ongoing, I don't know, issues with just the day-to-day stuff. But I know it doesn't have to be like that. I'm just not sure how you do that, because I think for a lot of agency owners it seems to be quite hard, and they struggle to scale, and maybe they're too involved. Maybe that's the issue. I'm wondering how you look at it. So you've done three completely different things now, right? There was the
Yeah.
marketplace, which is essentially a software business at its core, right? And then the agency, and then the e-com. So I wonder how you see the differences between those three.
Yeah. So with an agency, you can productize it as well. It's called Productize Services, where
Hmm.
you take something which is part of your offering, which drives the biggest value to the customer, and you try to make it almost as a product, except that it's not software, but there is an extremely automated human process behind it. So let's say, for example, what we do a lot for especially SaaS founders is link building, right? So
Hmm.
we basically say, okay, we get you 10 or 20 links from top publications, like HubSpot and, whatever, like some really high domain authority pages. And the way we do it is because we already have relationships with these publications, and they are also interested in like content, and they are also maybe interested in another backlink. And then we do either like link exchanges, or we give them some like amazing content to publish with a link back to your website, right? And that can be actually automated, which is very different to, let's say, if you're a web developer or if you're a graphic designer. It's much harder to
Hmm.
automate and productize these type of things. Well, with web designer, maybe you can leverage, AI now to do some like first concepts, but still there is going to be a lot of back and forth. With backlinks,
Hmm.
it's less back and forth. Same with performance marketing, right? Like PPC, we also do it now. It's much more standardized, and we can basically tell you, look, this is how many campaigns we run. We basically, get you to like whatever 3 times ROAS. That's what we promise, and that's what we get paid for, right? And so a lot of the time, like actually, like of course, I didn't come up with all of this from day one, right? Like it was a journey. It was basically, testing, looking, churning through clients, understanding what works, what doesn't work, etc. And so with the agency, that's what works for us. But of course, sometimes it's also about the client saying to us, okay, now we rank for that page, but now, okay, we want to create more products, like you said, right? And we need more content around these products. So we need to, improve our conversion rate on the website. So then it becomes less scalable in a sense. But on the other hand, we already de-risked ourselves and we already acquired a customer, right? And then we like land and expand, which means that it's much easier for us to dedicate that energy with a client who is already paying us, right? And who we know that we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna just add more value to it. That's basically the crux of the agency. And so, when you talk about product businesses, in a sense, it can be a product business and just more human than software, but you can scale it as well. It just, I guess it's a different path to get there. Like with a,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, SaaS business, you might build a product and then you will take forever to see if you have product market fit. And then
Mm-hmm.
let's say you have your first customers, then you start scaling. Yes, it's some kind of like, let's say, more automated by then, but then you will see that shortly after you launch, your competitors launch, and then you need to start adding product features to stay on track and to not have your customer churn to another software, which is basically doing the same thing as you, right? With
Yeah.
the agency, you make money from day one because you launch something where there is always product market fit already. And so with an agency, the tricky part is much more about the fulfillment. Like, can you get the results you promised? And the second thing is much more about growth channels because no agency grows product led. In software,
Mm-hmm.
of course, you can grow product led if your product is amazing. With the agency, is much more about being a really good marketer to actually grow your own agency as well.
With the e-com business that you have, you mentioned that's an Amazon brand. So is Amazon the only acquisition channel there, or you have other channels?
So Amazon is our main acquisition channel. Shortly after we acquired the brand, we did launch a website and started also
Mm-hmm.
putting some content out there. And we see organic traffic from our website as well. But the reality is that the customer acquisition costs on Amazon are so low. We're talking about
Uh-huh.
$6 to $7 per customer,
Uh-huh.
that it's just like the best channel ever right now. And
Huh.
so
Interesting.
if I were to look to sell the brand, yes, the valuation I would get right now would not be as high if the brand would be also on Google, Facebook, retail, omni-channel, etc. Right? But the reality is, I just want to scale in a profitable manner, and that's why Amazon at the moment makes the most sense.
So you acquired that brand, and you said you grew it by a factor of six. Was it been like 6 or 12 months, which is pretty crazy on Amazon. What's the game plan there? Because and it's scented candles, which is always interesting to me because it doesn't. I'm sure that on Amazon there's probably like 100,000 scented candles, right? So
Yeah.
how do you win that game?
I mean, there are not quite 100,000, but there are many, many. But there is also a 500,000 search volume just on Amazon alone for scent
Mm.
candles, right,
Mm-hmm.
per month. So how do we win? This is a good question. So the number one is product, funny enough, because in the physical world, product matters as much as in the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
Product in the physical world is a function of what type of reviews you have, right? How high your review is on Amazon, for example, and how many of those reviews you have. And the how high and how many determines also your organic positioning in Amazon search. So Amazon search works very similar to Google search, except that you have actually a really strong correlation between paid campaigns on Amazon and organic ranking on Amazon as well, because the more reviews you get through paid, the higher you rank organically
Uh-huh.
as well. Versus in Google, you don't have that, review element when it comes to ranking. So the game plan and the reason we do a lot of sales and make a good profit is because we position ourselves as a luxury organic candle brand, which means
Mm-hmm.
we are one of the few players who's 100% organic. So soya and ingredients, nothing has any like petrochemicals in there, and the majority of brands have petrochemicals because it's much cheaper to produce. The second is we have a fairly large candle, which is amazing design, so it actually works really well for like gifting as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the third element is really our marketing strategy is extremely good on Amazon because you have hundreds of different campaigns you can run on Amazon, which we basically do. And that's how we outperform.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, it's probably clever. You mentioned product, right? So you have differentiation on the product because yeah, otherwise I guess price is important, but if you go just with the price, then you can just it's a race to the bottom, right? If
Yeah.
you just don't want to have the lowest price, and then it's hard to build a profitable or at least a substantially profitable company.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Another so changing the topic a little bit, you mentioned about we talked a little bit about building a brand before and building a network, and how obviously when you have an agency that's important for your business, can be important in general as well. I noticed that you're a member of Hampton, which is for those who don't know, founders organization, a pretty new one, right? I guess it was established just about maybe a year or 2 years ago,
Yeah, 1.5 years ago. Yeah. Mhm.
1.5 years ago. And you were one of the first members, from what I understand. So how was that? Did Sam or Joe just message you and they were like, "Hey, do you want to join?" Or what's the story?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story. So I didn't know of Sam Parr as opposed to most other people who joined Hampton, who are like, in love with his podcast and shows. I was part of another community called On Deck, and On
Yeah,
Deck
I'm
was like a tech
familiar.
focused founders community, and they had a cohort called On Deck Scale, and I was part of that. And one of the executive coaches in On Deck Scale was an executive coach at Hampton. And when I
Uh-huh.
started telling the executive coach in On Deck that I actually want to meet founders who run profitable businesses, she said to me, "Oh, I run this basically, mastermind in Hampton with pretty much all bootstrapped founders." And I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that's cool." And then she said, "Yeah, they just opened the cohort, whatever, not the cohort, but like, application, and so you can try to interview and try to get in." And so yeah, I joined. I was like member number whatever 102 or something, and in London I was the third member. And today there are probably 800 members, and they 2 months after I joined maybe like open it up to the public and started promoting it. In London there are now around 50. I just flew in for a dinner. There are probably
Oh,
50 founders
nice.
now in London. So yeah, it's a very cool community. Of course, now it's not just bootstrap founders. So of course, there are some founders who did raise, but predominantly it is all about how do you grow a profitable business, how do you make cash, and that's been a really, really useful experience for me. Yeah.
Nice. Is there any other networking kind of tip or trick or hack that you have? Networking is, so for me, I talk about that sometimes here in the podcast, right? Being in London, I feel like it's one of the centers in the world where, shit happens, right? Like when you got some of the most ambitious people, you got some of the most interesting companies. Probably most of the Europe's unicorns come from the UK, and it's people who are smart and ambitious. They come here, right? And that's where we meet them, and that's the main reason why I'm here at the end of the day. I think it's one of the most ambitious cities in the world, and that's why the podcast, it's a way to meet interesting people and learn something in the process. That's why I have my own community of product founders as well. That's why I very often just message people randomly on LinkedIn. I'm like, "Hey, you look interesting. Do you want to go for a drink sometime?" in trying to not sound sketchy or salesy, but just literally, "Hey, I just want to meet you. I just want to go for a drink and see if we can talk about something interesting together," kind of thing. Curious how you go about it. So obviously, one side is the personal brand and building that. I know you got some decent
Yeah.
following on social media as well, but outside of that and outside of Hampton, anything else that you
Yeah,
can share?
yeah. So, back when I was in investment banking, even I used to run like dinners with other, well, finance
Hmm.
professionals. When I worked at a hedge fund, I ran idea dinners. One of them was even sponsored by Goldman. And so, like, these dinners, helped me to build a really good network, especially in finance initially. As a founder, what I started doing is I started basically joining various communities, right? So, On Deck was the first one. After On Deck, I created my own community in London with founders called Growth Minds. So there are monthly drinks happening every month in London. Sometimes they're now also like hosted by VC firms now. And then I joined Hampton, and then I joined another community which was based all around location independent founders. So basically,
Mm.
founders who don't have a physical location on a permanent basis. The community is called Dynamite Circle. And so, again,
Heard
that
of it.
community helps me to like move to a new city for a month, join a WhatsApp group, and then suddenly see like 50 other founders in that city who I can just attend their drinks or meet on one-on-one, etc. Similar to you, I do from time to time, if I see a really interesting profile, I do reach out and say, look, are you free for a chat? When you fundraise, you meet a lot of really interesting people as well. So I raised only from family offices and angels, and that allowed me
Mhm.
to grow my network really well as well, because then other investors start introducing you to other investors. And then maybe another way to grow is by doing also dinners, but related to maybe a specific event. So, for example, I went to the Web Summit last week in Lisbon. And what happened is before that, I basically posted or like pinged a bunch of VCs and founders in a big WhatsApp group I'm part of if they are around for a dinner on the Sunday before the Web Summit. And basically with that one message, I got 13 VCs and some founders join to, they came to a restaurant I booked, and basically we
Mm,
had a really nice dinner, right? And from that dinner, one guy suggested, let's create a WhatsApp group. We created a WhatsApp group. And then, there were like other events during the Web Summit week, right? And so basically that alone got me like 100 new connections because it just compounded from that
mm,
one dinner. Now, my head of growth moved for 9 months to Australia now. And he's applying the same strategy around like dinners and like pre-event events, and is
mhm,
seeing a great success with that. So that's basically, and then maybe the final hack is joining a members club as well. So I was part of the
uh-huh.
Lansdowne Club in London. I mean, I was part of like a few like George, etc. as well, but like the Lansdowne Club has a really strong like squash community, and so you start meeting people through that as well. And so of course, if you are in London, there's so many amazing member clubs, and I would just suggest join them. Not only you get like really good facilities and really good food, but you also get exposure to a really strong network of people usually.
Nice. I love the hack with conferences. I think that's the best thing about conferences. It's never the talks, it's never the presentations. It's always the events that happen around. Especially Web Summit is known for that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's all about the events that happen around the conference that are organized by other people. That's the best part. And then if you
Exactly.
actually organize them, that's the best hack of all, because then you're the host, you're the organizer, and people know who you are. You can invite other people. So that's, yeah, the ultimate hack, I think. That's pretty clever. And yeah, things like dinners. I think I'm going to join. I actually wanted to join this year already EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, which is quite well known as well. I would say it's like an sort of an older version of Hampton, but the problem is that you need to be there at their event once a month, every month. I think you can miss one per year, which is impossible for me because I don't even spend 12 months a year or 11 months per year in the UK. So that'll be a little bit challenging. But I think Hampton seems more open, or Dynamite Circle, perhaps. I've heard of them, but haven't looked into them recently. So I'll pick one of them next year probably to
Yeah,
join.
just pick one, and then you can join multiple as well, right? But of course, you want to pick one first, and because it's like the more you give, the more you get usually. So
Mm,
you don't want to be
mm,
like joining straight away all of them. EO is definitely good. EO has, however, bigger portion of non-online businesses than online businesses, and most of my
uh-huh.
friends who join EO basically quit EO to join Hampton or to join Dynamite Circle if they
That's
are in an
interesting.
online space. But if you run like a property group or a restaurant business, EO is great for sure.
That's interesting. Okay. And I wasn't sure how many members Hampton has in Europe, because I know they're primarily US and Canada. And well,
And
it's
just
good to
UK
know if
now.
there's 50 people here, then that's already a decent membership.
Yeah.
Nice. I want to talk to you about performance and ambition. I think that's an interesting topic that I personally think about quite a lot. And I think, I mean, just going into investment banking when you're young, I think you have to be ambitious, and putting in 100-hour weeks. I think you have to be ambitious, and, building businesses to the size that you did, it requires, yeah, ambition for sure, and some kind of personal performance. I'm curious, how do you think about personal performance, first of all? What is that for you?
I think personal performance for me is not only ambition, but also discipline.
Mm,
And discipline just means that you want to some sort of regular, a regular habit and a regular, repetition of a certain thing you do, no matter if you like it or not, for a long enough period for you to see if it works or if it doesn't work.
hmm
And so that for me, basically discipline, which is, it's like more hard work almost than ambition, is basically, the key for performance.
hmm Somebody said it nicely the other day. They said the person who's willing to be uncomfortable, the person who's willing to be more uncomfortable is the person who will win. I think often that comes with discipline, right? Often you just have to do the things that have to be done, and there's often uncomfortable and you don't want to do them, but they just have to be done. And yeah, that's how I see willpower, or yeah, but an important aspect, as you were saying. And then just, as you said, doing it day after day, right? Even sometimes when there are no results, sometimes when times are hard, just have to keep going forward. Do you have any specific habits or unusual things that you do throughout the day to just keep yourself going forward, or to either that, or just to maximize your, your performance,
Yeah.
your output?
So I would say it goes, basically in hand with, discipline and ambition and hard work. I would say waking up, around 6 a.m. every day. And like on weekends, I usually wake up pretty early as well. That just gives you much more time during the day, right? Like you still go to bed at, let's say, whatever, 11 p.m. And you can basically do so much more than the person who wakes up at like 9 a.m., let's say, and goes to bed at 9 p.m. to start watching Netflix for 2 more hours before that person goes to
Mm,
bed, right? So,
mm,
waking up early and then maximizing your day. And then one of the things I do every day, there's like no way, no excuses, is usually sport. I usually either go to the gym or I do tennis or I go for a run. And so every day, I think like in my life, like from the age of whatever, like 10, I probably the longest I had without without physical activity in terms of sport was like maybe 2 weeks. Right. So
mhm.
I always exercise. And I think that gives you a healthy body, healthy mind, right? But it also just gives you this energy and just, yeah, improves your performance. So I would say, yeah, like that, and waking up early. One of the things I started maybe kind of like a year ago, and I stopped drinking alcohol almost like for the most part of
Mhm.
it. Sometimes let's say once in 3 months, I might have a glass of wine or whatever, if it's like a super special occasion or something. If there's too much group pressure and I can't resist, but usually I try also not to drink anymore, and that also helped, to be honest. I mean, some of these guys like Lex and Huberman, they all talk about it, and it is true that over time you just don't have that fatigue, and you don't realize that you have fatigue until you
Yeah,
drink alcohol again. If you haven't been drinking for 6 months, you won't be able to
yeah.
tell the difference, but then you drink and you actually know there is a difference.
I love it. I'm a big ambassador for not drinking. I stopped drinking probably about 7 years ago. So maybe
Wow.
8 years ago already. So it's been a while. And that's back when I was still living in Switzerland. And initially, when I moved to Switzerland, we were drinking almost every day after work. It was like the kind of thing, you come to a new country, it's a way for you to meet people. It's a way to, just bond with your colleagues, with new friends there. You go for a drink, right? What else are you going to do? And then I was finishing my university thesis. That's what I was
Mhm.
doing. So I just had to take a few months of zero socializing. I just had to close myself into my room and finish that. I was working. I had a job, but in the afternoon, or in the evenings and weekends, I was doing that project. And after those 3 months, I realized, I was like, oh my god, I have so much more time. I have so much more energy. This is amazing. It's like not drinking is just really great. So was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And then I started gradually just saying no to all drinks. And I remember when I was a few months after that, I met somebody for the first time. It was like somebody introduced me to a guy who came to Switzerland, and he was like, "Look, you guys could potentially do something together. You should meet." And we went out for a drink. And normally, what do? You order a beer, right? And that was the first time that I said to a random person, I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna have a beer, I'm just gonna have sparkling water. And he said, oh my god, I'm so glad you said that, because I also want to drink less, but I always just feel the pressure that I need to order a beer. So I'm so glad that you ordered sparkling water. And that was like mind-blowing to me. I was like, that's great. If I can be the person who enables others to also not drink if they don't want to, amazing. I'll take that role on my shoulders. So
Yeah.
ever since then, yeah, it was kind of very empowering. And now I'm basically the same as you. I maybe drink like 3-4 times a year, if even, and that's about it. And it's worth it for me. It's like really, really worth it. That extra energy and time that you have.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's a big deal. Right. What was I gonna say? So a few maybe quick questions for the end. So if you're 20 years old again and you want to start a business, what would you do?
So 20 years means the year 2008, and I think YouTube was created in 2005. So I would probably launch a bunch of YouTube channels around finance, entrepreneurship, tech, and
Uh-huh.
by now they would have all have millions of followers and various revenue streams each.
Nice. What one book or course or person or experience had the biggest impact on your life?
So I read a book called 4,000 Weeks, and it's basically a book about how you want to focus on today and on, being like right now and not constantly think about the future and, oh, tomorrow I will have much more money and therefore I will do XYZ today just because tomorrow will be better. Right. And so that book really taught me that you really need to be in the moment and you really need to be focusing on what you're doing today and also enjoying what you do today rather than only doing the stuff today in order to enjoy something tomorrow. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
4,000 weeks is basically the average lifespan of a human. So this book
Uh-huh.
is a bit
Mm-hmm.
spiritual as well, but overall, I would say it did influence me quite a lot because it gave me a much better approach to patience as well, which was more
Uh-huh.
a weakness of mine in the past. And now I really understand that, okay, just focus on today, enjoy today, do things you enjoy today, and don't really even think about tomorrow because tomorrow can change, right? And you don't have the
Uh-huh.
control. And if you keep just optimizing for tomorrow, but tomorrow keeps changing, you never enjoy your life, basically.
Interesting. Okay, that's going on my reading list. Sounds insightful. What's one of the most worthwhile investments that you've ever made? Could be investment of time or money or energy.
Yeah, so funny enough, you actually asked me about Hampton, right, and communities, and I would say one of the best investments I made was actually joining, and paying obviously for some of these communities, because I got like a massive exposure to entrepreneurs who are much, let's say on a much bigger level than me. It also opened up a whole like U.S. network system to me. I
Hmm.
obviously have like some family there, etc. But like now I also know hundreds of entrepreneurs there. And then with Dynamite Circle, it just opened me to being able to like travel and enjoy certain places, let's say, by still having a community to tap into.
Hmm. Hmm. I wanted to ask you before, but I forgot. I see photos of Richard Branson, I think, behind you. Is that inspiration or what is that?
And no, that's actually me sitting in the Virgin Active gym in Cape Town, which is
Ah,
the flagship gym of actually of the world. Funny story because he is from South Africa, and
aha,
so the gym in Cape Town has a massive co-working space inside the gym with like board meeting rooms, which is like the
aha.
next level. And so I work a lot from here in Cape Town, which I arrived in Cape Town yesterday.
Right. Okay. We didn't even get to that. So you're in Cape Town right now.
Yeah.
Because you're currently traveling around a lot, right? You're living basically like a digital nomad kind of
Yeah, I was.
lifestyle.
I was for the last year. Like I relocated from London to Lisbon, and yeah, I probably spent half a year in Lisbon, but it was like on and off because I went to Thailand for conferences and meetups. I went to Mexico, I went to Spain, and then for the winter last year, I went to Cape Town for 2 months, and then this year I
Hmm.
basically said, look, there is a massive tech community coming down from London, from Germany to Cape Town over the winter, which is summer here. And it's a
Hmm.
great place to be because, again, like it's all about discipline and productivity. And if you have your day starting here at like 5 a.m. because it's sunny and it's always warm, it just allows you to basically do so much more than in a very dark and wet and cold London during the winter.
No, I agree. I'm flying to Costa Rica in 2 weeks. My wife is Costa Rican, so the winters. We don't spend winters here.
Perfect.
not not just because of productivity, also just because it's nice and pleasant there. But
That goes,
definitely
hand in
helps.
hand. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Nice. All right. Is there anything else that we should talk about?
No, I mean, look, if people want to get in touch with me, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I just started the YouTube channel as well, so if they can subscribe and like my videos there, that would be amazing.
Cool.
But other
What do
than
you
that,
talk
look,
about? What do you talk about on your YouTube channel?
I'm still playing around a bit, but like, of course, one of the things I will be talking about is how to grow businesses, right? Like various
Hmm.
growth channels, how to get, customers, how to scale your business. I did upload a webinar I did, which was attended by 200 founders on fundraising, especially fundraising from family offices and angels. I did a few shorts, which I actually also about like performance as a founder, and then basically the two videos which will be uploaded soon. One talks about basically the bankruptcy of Thrasio and how sometimes you cannot just throw good money after bad money to save a broken business model.
Hmm.
So I'm still playing around. I think on YouTube, you to grow the audience, it's not just about like what you might want to talk about to get, let's say, leads, but it's also about what the audience actually feels is entertaining for them, in
Yeah.
addition to being informative. And so I think
Yeah.
being a bit broader around the entrepreneurial, you know, topic landscape is what I will be focusing on.
Nice. Cool. Well, we're going to link to all of that in the description. So, including your LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube, so people can find you. And
Perfect.
yeah, thanks again. Thanks again for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. Bye.
Take care. Thanks for listening until the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the content, please do me a favor and click the like button on YouTube or give us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is that you listen to your podcasts. Leave a comment, subscribe if you want to hear more from us. That really helps also to get the podcast out there, and that helps me get more interesting guests and create even more interesting content. So I really appreciate if you do that. If you have any other comments, questions, feel free to message me. You can find me on Twitter. That's usually the best channel. The link should be somewhere in the description. And check out my Twitter. I try to tweet interesting stuff about similar content that we talk about on the podcast, key insights from the podcast as well, and just generally stuff that I learn and stuff that I do. So see you. Thanks.